Hello and welcome to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. My name is Ben and with me is...
Dr. Totenkopf.
You're playing the corpse?
I guess. I don't know. I'm
Spoilers.
excited today.
Spoilers?
I just want to say I'm excited today.
I'm glad one of us is.
Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow is one of the reasons why I enjoy doing a podcast. And it's one that I've often almost picked in our entire run of doing this podcast. And then I was kind of saving it for when I felt like it would be really special. And I guess that time is now. And I already know how you feel about it. So this is maybe going to be a very different podcast in terms of how two people feel about the same product. So before you maybe bring me all the way down with how you feel about it.
No, I would never, Jim. I would never.
We'll see. Let's do a synopsis, and then you can do some facts, and then you can hit me with how you really feel.
I can. I'll be honest. Let's go.
All right. In an alternate 1939, reporter Polly Perkins investigates missing scientists when New York is suddenly attacked by giant robots. She teams up with ex-flame Joe, Sky Captain Sullivan, whose private air force battles the machines above the city. Clues lead them to Nepal, where they discover Dr. Totenkopf's plan, which is to launch a massive rocket carrying animals, plants, and the seeds of human life into space, triggering a process that will destroy Earth and restart life elsewhere. Along the way, they team up with mercenary Frankie Cook, played by Angelina Jolie. They survive an underwater battle, and they infiltrate Totenkopf's lair. Inside, they learn that he has been dead for years, and his machines are carrying out his final orders, led by his evil robot henchwoman. Sky Captain and Polly sabotage the rocket as it launches, saving the planet, while Polly uses her last film reel for a personal shot instead of the big scoop. But oh no, the lens cap was on. The end.
In the end, thank you for listening to this podcast. It's been a fantastic one.
Hey, that is exactly what happens in this movie, can I just say?
It is pretty spot on. You missed a few blimps in there, but sure. Released in 2004, directed by Kerry Conran. His only film? He's got some short films that I was able to find, but this is it. Cinematography by Eric Adkins, written by Kerry, starring Gwyneth Paltrow, Jude Law, Giovanni Ribisi, Michael Gambon, Bai Ling, Omid Dajali, and Angelina Jolie. Music by Edward Shearmur. Runtime for 106 minutes. It felt like 206 minutes. Budget of $70 million, box office US domestic of 37, international of 20 million, and worldwide of $57,947,036. I am friends with you, Jim, despite this movie. I know why you love it. I get it. It ticks so many boxes for you, but this movie is the epitome of style over content. I either was wrong and I've never seen this movie before, or I have seen this movie and I've purged it from my brain. I found it boring. The visuals didn't really help me. I thought the flapping enemy planes were pretty cool and the robots were pretty cool and the design is interesting, but it's just not enough for me, man. It's not enough. The idea that all these actors are in this movie is wild to me. First-time director, a weird idea. Not the first, but one of the first to be completely kind of shot the way it's shot. And then you got all these guys in it. And it wasn't originally created by a studio. It was created by one guy with independent financing through another rich Italian dude, basically, who they then found a distribution deal after the creation of the movie. This is an interesting movie. It is not a good movie.
Look, that's you've actually been kinder than I thought you were going to be there, because obviously in your research you found the production details, which are a large part of why I really enjoy this as a product, you know? So, and I should
Yes.
say as a product, because for me, Sky Captain is a whole package. It's not just about what we see on screen, what's interesting, the plot, the characters. It is
I'm
about.
sorry, did you say plot?
Well, look,
I didn't realize there was one.
I'm just saying it's something that, now I think you're being too harsh, can I just say? But I do think that for me, this is a film whose production it's probably more fascinating than even what the story is on screen and the characters that we see on screen. The way it was done is super interesting. What they were trying to achieve is super interesting. The direction that this comes from, of being this truly independent production, and also just the vibes of the whole thing. This is the kind of movie that you can't make really in the studio system. Now, you could make it now in the studio system a lot more successfully than they could back in 2004. Like in 2004, this was a huge swing, right? A huge swing. And look, if we're looking at it in terms of box office dollars and whatnot, it was a miss as well. They swung big and they also missed.
Well, there's conflict over that, because the director and his brother say that there's no way it cost that much to make, and the studio's lying.
Yeah, but still in terms of like overall global box office success, you know what I mean? Like, and yes, I know that as well, that they do dispute the final budget figure and they say it's inflated. Whether that's true or not, the fact is, if they'd made, you know, $700-800 million, no one would care, but they didn't. So therefore, but look, the thing here, and just to get back onto me saying you could make this movie now, this movie has a lot of connections aesthetically that people still enjoy. The most recent Fantastic Four film comes to mind, right?
Yep.
Marvel operating in this retro future 60s world, which is not quite the same as Sky Captain's world, but it is, you know, definitely spiritually linked there. But at the same time, they're using that as an aesthetic. They're not really telling that kind of vintage story in a way that is so out there as compared to Sky Captain. Sky Captain is literally straight out of the 1930s and early 40s. Like, it just is. It's aside from the technology that they're using to bring it to life, this is the kind of story. This is the way that they were talking in these stories. It's that idea of the serial storytelling that would play before a feature film, that we would get to these heroes and it's this boy's own adventure sort of thing. And I love that they go for it. I do love that they go for it. And I love that they just swing and they just say, this is what it is. At the same time, I don't disagree with a lot of your criticisms of the movie. I really do think that the chemistry in this film between Jude Law and Gwyneth Paltrow isn't quite there.
It's chalky. It's weird.
It's a bit odd. They have what is supposed to be a bickering kind of relationship that really just, if you get that wrong, it kind of plays like people are just being nasty to each other, which is kind of what...
It just feels like they were horrible to each other before this, and there was no actual real love. Like,
you can't see that warmth that must be there if you have this couple that is constantly sort of bickering. So this is probably due to the lightning fast shooting schedule that they had. They were on this film for I think it was 26 days or something like that. And they had to shoot everything, and it was all blue screen and no one could really see what was going on, and very different kind of production for that point in time. So I'm not really blaming anybody, but I am seeing that the final product doesn't quite get there in terms of likable characters, chemistry, all of these sorts of things that we would want to see. This is a movie that lives and dies basically on its design and aesthetic. And in that sense, it lives. The design and aesthetic is incredible in this film.
And it very much lives. Like, movies like this kind of interest me. Like, I want to know why people like them, because people do like this movie. It has become not quite a cult classic, but there's definitely a fan base that has developed around this movie. And it is all over its style, and it's all over its production story, and very little to do with the actors and the plot and the central story. The themes and the genre, yes, but the actual story and execution, no. Um, and it took me a while to kind of make peace with that. Like, it's just like, it doesn't hook me, and it hooks other people. That is 100% fine. But it does feel, outside of its technological achievement for its time, it does feel just kind of like amateury in its direction of its people, in a little execution of pieces, in the way the script goes from scene to scene, which I realize is a deliberate, or feels like a deliberate attempt to ape the serialization format, right? Like, quite often the little bits before movies didn't have linking parts the next time you saw them. It was just a continuation or jumping into the middle of a story for a character that you knew, right? It was, you were following the character, not necessarily the story. But we have a 106-minute film. You can let that part of the genre go and just stitch it together a little bit better.
Well, I think that's where you do get to, and it's just funny that we're looking at Sky Captain so close to that Fantastic Four movie, because
Yeah.
I'm really using that as a frame of reference to say Sky Captain just committed fully, and it
Yeah.
committed to the good and it committed to the bad of that particular style. Whereas what a perhaps maybe a savvier movie that was trying to reach a more global appeal might do is use the style, but not completely commit to every single little aspect of that genre and mood, so that a modern audience can still take something away from it as well. Now, obviously, there is also an argument to be made that if you did that, you dilute the product to a point where it is no longer the artistic intent of the creatives, which that is one of the really cool things about this movie. This movie is exactly what they wanted in terms of its intent. Like, there is not, no one came in and butchered this or tried to do what I just said, which people would call disgusting producer talk of making it more palatable or more commercial, right? You know, part of the charm of Sky Captain is no one did that. It was just, this is what it is. Let's present it to the world. It's very, very similar to the George Lucas approach, what he was doing with those prequels at the same time, saying, this is mine. If you like it, great, but I'm not going to do a whole lot to actually please you, if you like. This is my product.
And look, there are things in this movie that I do enjoy. There are performances I do enjoy. I for some reason I love Giovanni Ribisi's character. I think that really fits, and that is a kind of a piece of that time period of like that kind of sidekicky kind of character to the main guy who gets captured or who does these sort of things. I enjoy that. I enjoy I enjoy what Jude Law's trying to go for. Jude Law is playing what is very kind of a one-note character, but there is style there and there is substance to his performance. Gwyneth Paltrow, I think, looks a bit lost in this movie. I think she struggles with maybe the way this is moving. And you're right, like, this is ambitious. This is what they're doing at this time period is wild, especially with the experience they have in filmmaking going into this, right? Like, the dude, as I said, I know, shot basically a tester for this movie in his lounge room on a blue screen and showed it somebody to convince them that he could make movies, right? So, like, he worked hard to
that
do
was like
this.
a years-long process,
like 4
to get
years or
that,
something. Yeah.
to get that little short up off the ground as a proof of concept. And, you know, like, there's the stories there of the rocking under the desk because the computer kept crashing and he couldn't get it to go, you know.
Yeah.
So that idea of a passion project, and that idea that that guy got to actually make the thing, that's pretty cool. So
he's won. Like, he achieved something in this movie. Like Conran achieved something that many people, including us, are unable to achieve. He achieved his dream. He made a movie and people watched it and people loved it. I just think that it suffers a bit because of its circumstance and how strict it adheres to its kind of inspiration.
Yeah, it is. It is a total commitment that is the double-edged sword there. But it's also the thing that makes it this fascinating artifact of cinema history now. Because we're 21 years on from
It
Sky
is
Captain
history
and
too, yeah.
absolutely. Well, we're 21 years on now from Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow. So enough time has passed. And look, I will say this is a film where I own it. And every time I go to rewatch it, I think I'm going to like it much more than I actually do, which stops me from rewatching it again for about 4 years. But it sticks in the brain, and I keep thinking about it, and I think about the imagery, and I think about individual moments, and I think about Easter eggs to other films, and I think about the production story, and then I come back and I start again, and it always goes pretty much exactly the same way. For the first 20 minutes, I am just so in. I'm like, that's right, this movie, man, like this thing, oh, it's so cool. Look at that robot design. It's the intrigue, it's the pulp, it's the fun. And then I kind of start losing interest slowly over the course of the rest of the runtime because there's just not quite enough to hold my attention truly for the runtime of the movie, which is something that you were talking about. And I feel it too. It's just that I have such positive vibes that it carries me back to the well more often than maybe even it should, you know? And what's interesting is when this movie came out in 2004, I hated it. I hated this movie when it first came out. This was the start.
Trust your instincts.
Yeah, right. I'm just saying that was really the start of me. And look, I should say the reason I hated it was I didn't understand it. I had no frame of reference for the 1930s and 40s pulp serials. I didn't know. Like, sure, I'd watched Star Wars, which people always say, "Oh, that's got its roots in," but Star Wars, again, it has its roots in. Yeah. It's not actually that, right? It's not actually that thing straight up. So, yeah, it was something that simply I viewed it. I would have been, what, year 12, maybe first year out of high school. And I was really just getting into cinema as a thing. And I didn't understand this movie. I went to see it and I expected a blockbuster, which I think as well is a little bit of a bit of a problem.
A lot of people expected a blockbuster.
Well, that's a bit of the problem that they had. You know, they had this unique visual style and they marketed it as a blockbuster, as Star Wars. And instead, it was a 106-minute experimental film that harkens back to the 1940s and commits to its premise fully while using the latest technology. Well, sort of the latest technology, you know, which again, that's not actually a blockbuster. It was a huge problem for audiences and for me when I saw it. You know, I was very annoyed by what I'd seen, and it really took learning about the film. It took looking at examples of the cinema that they were reaching from to then develop the appreciation for it. But of course, if you're and at that time, so by the time I got out of uni and had my film degree, if you like, I was much more, oh yeah, I get it, that was great, you know. But that early experience was not that way. And of course, if the audience needs, you know, a veritable long form history of narrative film and all trope styles and conventions in order to engage with the product, then you probably don't have a terribly commercial product at the end of the day.
Yeah, it does strike me as the sort of film that the people involved were passionate about and were confused when people didn't latch onto it. Because they're like, it's very much the artist thing of like, I put everything into this. Why don't people love it as much as we think they should? And that's a rough feeling as anybody who's created anything, even on a small scale, right? You know, hey, you could be doing a podcast and you think, man, so many people should be listening to us and they're not. But you could tell there's love on the screen. You can tell there's passion on the screen. I want to talk about Giovanni Ribisi. That dude doesn't miss as far as performances go. Like, this role he was in didn't need a lot, but there were little things. Like, obviously, the chewing of the gum was part of the story, but the way he kind of committed to that in the way he kind of did it. His kind of speech patterns and his looks and his little acting moments. He had probably the best little acting moments in this film, and some of them were a bit broad, but like, I don't know, man. Whenever he's on screen, I'm locked in. It doesn't matter what he's doing.
Yeah, he really seemed to understand the performance style required for this sort of storytelling in a way
Yeah,
that, yep, some of the other cast members, uh, maybe they needed more takes, maybe they were directed a certain way, but for whatever reason, his works and it works as full commitment there. And I think also that sort of just speaks to how good he is as an actor
yeah,
generally. Like the dude's a chameleon. He can do almost anything. I remember it would have only been 1 year after this that he was the villain in Flight of the Phoenix with Dennis
yes,
Quaid, or rather antagonist, if you like. He's not
yeah.
quite a villain. But that's a wildly different character to this, and also played expertly well and a standout of that particular movie. So fast forward a few years after that, and now he's the corporate head honcho in Avatar. But of course, most people still knew him from 3 years before this movie, Sky Captain, as the brother in Friends
Yeah.
which is again completely different again. So you're right that
Frank Boucher.
he doesn't miss here, and he
No.
doesn't miss pretty much ever when he
Yeah.
does something, and he's just really good at shape shifting into whatever the style is that the movie requires of him.
Also, I just love seeing Marco Gambon and stuff. His voice tickles my brain. Like, just the way he kind of enunciates and pronounces things. I'm just like, perfect role for him as like the kind of editor person or whatever. No, yes, yeah. And I kind of wish there was more of him, but obviously it doesn't make sense for there to be more of him or anything like that. And Omid Djali, he's also fantastic in anything he does. I think I'm pronouncing his last name wrong. I do apologize. But he is so wonderful in those kind of really small roles with a bit of punch. And again, he delivers in this. I just think in this sort of film, it's really important to point out when actors get it right, because this is, on paper, an impossible task for an actor.
Mm.
Like because I'm always interested in how actors talk about these sort of acting experiences, and there are some actors who come away from it being very, very upset or really not enjoying the process, because sometimes you're acting by yourself on a screen with no one around you, and you're reacting to stimulus that's supposed to be there. So it's pure imagination, right? And that's hard to do. So it's always interesting to see how kind of actors adapt to it and deal with it. I think I remember reading about this film. He actually pretty much shot the whole film without the main cast, so he could to previs with them to show them what they would be seeing and doing in the scenes. Like, he kind of storyboarded this to the nth degree to try and get the best performance out of his actors. And because none of them had experience doing this, that's still even hard to do.
Yeah, it was a pre-shoot for this one, which is something that is sometimes done as a confidence thing as well,
Mm.
for investors and for people you're trying to attract to a project, to say it will be this, and you can see that I can do it. But there's a lot of interesting stuff though, and I think your talk on performances is a nice segue into it. So this film is chock full of references to
Hmm.
other media. I think the biggest one, obviously, is that they got Laurence Olivier to basically return from the grave in some ways. So it's one of those early examples of a constructed performance based on a deceased actor, because obviously that's something that we see a lot now with the idea of CGI face
Yeah.
replacements and deep fakes and whatnot. But at this point in time, it was really very, very new to say, hey, we could do that maybe through some archive footage and some clever tricks and whatnot. And while again, it's something that ethically is a bit sort of interesting, I
Yeah.
do think that in this case, it works. It works quite well, and it suits the tone of the movie. And I think that it actually doesn't strike that tone whereby you're feeling a bit unsettled for the deceased in this movie having their performance done in this way. Like, I think it's pretty innocuous, I suppose, is
Yeah.
what I'm sort of saying there. And I think it does help to add to the overall palette of the movie that Totenkopf is this, great figure from cinema history. But there's a lot of other stuff. Like, I'm not going to say I saw it all, but I went, and even just before we did this podcast, I went back and watched the 1941 Superman mechanical monsters cartoon by
That's a classic, yeah.
yeah, but that's where the robots in this movie come from. They're exactly the same with the the electricity between the antennas, and even the way they fly. They sort of look like planes, and it's a reveal that they're not. Like, it's exactly the same, and that's, again, super cool to see. The idea that Totenkopf's island is maybe Skull Island from King Kong, because they go down underneath and they see the shipwrecks, and one of them says Venture, which is the name of the ship, obviously, that they go to for Skull Island, and there's dinosaurs on the island and stuff. Like, so all this kind of stuff that is like just classic pulp cinema. The rocket design is basically a Buck Rogers rocket design, and I love all that stuff. Like, that's the stuff that makes it fun. And there's so many Easter eggs here. I would not have caught them all. And that's also another thing that makes it fun to rewatch. As my knowledge of cinema just grows over time, you can return to a film like this and see more and more because they're chock full of it,
Look, you're right. And as I said, this is easily one of the boxes I saw ticked for you as far as loving a movie, right? You love a movie that can be rewatched. You love a movie that can be broken down. You love a movie that has secrets or stories to tell within itself. I think, honestly, on a larger scale, that's why people love the Lord of the Rings movies so much too, right? There's so much in the production of that movie as well as what's on the screen. I just think, obviously, this one suffers from having not as cool stuff on the scene to attach to as well. So, between the style and the genre choice, between the method of filming, between the production ideas, between the love and the care that goes into it, you said it at the start, these people achieved what they set out to do. They absolutely, 10 out of 10, made the movie they wanted to make. And they made a movie that we're talking about 21 years later. There's plenty of movies that were released 21 years ago we will never get to because they're not interesting to talk about. So, that's a win. That is a huge win for art. It's just not my art. Like, I'm trying to be kind here. Like, you're the guy who wants to know the story behind the story. I am too, once I enjoy the story that's on the screen.
Yeah, I don't need that as much. So, and I think
Yeah.
Sky Captain as well, there's layers to that. There's not just the production story of how Sky Captain's made, there's also the layers of Hollywood history and pulp filmmaking, which is something that I find fascinating now. Like, again, 2004, fresh out of high school, not as fascinating to me. But now, many, many years later, and really into cinema of all kinds, fascinating to me. So yeah, there's a lot there for me to enjoy. I am disappointed that you didn't quite rise to the heights of like get enjoying Sky Captain, even to the point that I do. But I do understand that you just needed a little more. You just needed a little more from it,
I'll give a bit of credit in that this movie visually shouldn't really hold up as well as it does. But because they committed so hard to a look, and because it is so stylized, it does still work. It does hold up. Like, if they had gone more realistic or tried to be more accurate or tried to be even 10% more prettier pictures, right, of the models and stuff, it would look horrendous today. But because they went purely for the vision, they went purely for the style and those things, it holds up, which I don't think they did on purpose, but is a really nifty kind of side effect of how hard they committed.
I reckon they did it on purpose. I reckon it was purposeful. Like the whole notion of how far do we go with the color palette? How much of that sort of soft Vaseline look do we put on the lens to
So much
get it?
Vaseline.
Now, look, I'm not saying they actually used Vaseline, but I'm
No.
just saying that it gives it that soft old Hollywood glow. And of course, that's going to hide a lot of compositing sins, but they're not really sins if that's the style that you've
Yeah.
committed to, you know? And instead, what you end up with is, as you say, a movie that 21 years on looks a heck of a lot better than a lot of other 2004 CGI, oramas, if you like, that were out at the time. So, look, thanks for coming on the journey. Why don't you tell people where the journey can continue if they are enjoying our wonderful retelling of Sky Captain and the World of Tomorrow?
If you want to continue the adventure with us, it's pretty easy to do. You can go to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. Those words unlock us at YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. You can listen to us on your way to work. You can watch us on your second monitor while you're at home. Or you can just sit down and lock in and talk cinema with us by jumping into those comments and saying, hey, Ben, you were too hard on this movie. Or Jim, you're an insane person. This movie is the worst. You can say it really nicely and constructively, and you can talk movies with us. We're happy to talk movies with you. Leave a comment, like, subscribe. Go check out our back catalogue. We've looked at a lot of movies now. Look, some of those earlier podcasts, a little bit shaky, but you can watch us evolve as creators and get better and better. If you want to follow us on the socials, you can do so on Instagram at Jim_and_Ben or Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures on TikTok. Now, before watching this movie, I came in with a solid plan about what I wanted to watch this week. It was a bit of a return to old Ben form, kind of like an 80s classic. And it was going to be really, really good. And then after watching this movie, I'm like, no, I need to do this right. I need to prove that harkening back to a genre, harkening back to a serialized format can be brilliant. And I thought, what better way to do that than to actually pick a movie that one of the actors we've spoken about was in? Now, what actor do you think that is?
I have no idea.
It's not Gwyneth Paltrow. It's not Jude Law. It's not Michael Gambon. It's not Bing Lung. And it's not Angelina Jolie. Also not Giovanni Ribisi. It is Omid Djalali.
Okay, all right.
And he was in Brendan Fraser's The Mummy.
Oh, man. I love me The Mummy. I love it.
Love me The Mummy. It is such a palate cleansing movie after this one.
Hey. Let's not sully Sky Captain with love for The Mummy. We can have both simultaneously.
No, it's a direct competition. Right? It's one or the other.
Well, I'm shutting this down and I'm going to go and watch The Mummy and I'm going to come back later and we're going to talk about it. But we're not going to compare it to Sky Captain. We're not doing that.
Thank you so much for listening and watching, guys. Join us on our next adventure with The Mummy.